Hello, BookTube. I have once again some new releases for your consideration, some books that are just recently out or that are forthcoming. I'm not opening packages for you on camera, but they're new arrivals here. And I like to make these videos just because I like you to know the furthest extent of what's coming, right? Because your reading time budget is far narrower than mine. I don't do anything else. And your book buying budget, good Lord, books are enormously expensive. So I want you to have as much of a heads up as possible for the things you definitely want, for the things that you maybe want to pre-order, for the things that you maybe want to get onto your library for them to order, see if they will do that. And also, if none of those things work and one of these things is just brightening up your world and there's no money in the imperial budget and there's no chance that your library will get it, and there's no chance that you could pre-order or anything like that, you can also just let me know. Maybe I'll be done with it, and then you can have it. So I've got a stack of these new releases that I thought we'd go through, and we'll try and do it expeditiously. The first one is from the University of Chicago Press, and this is The Pocket Epicurean by John Sellers. This comes out... it's out already. This is out already. This came out on March the 15th. And it is all about the Epicureans, which were one of these tiny little things that's meant to just literally go in your pocket. This is just 100 pages long. It's just about 100 pages long, about the Epicureans, quotes from them, thoughts about them. And who were they? What do we really need in order to live a happy life? Many of us spend an inordinate amount of time and effort trying to secure the things that we think we need in order to live well. But how many of us have paused to think about what it is we actually need in order to feel satisfied? Over 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Epicurus did just that. He thought about what it is that we really desire and what we do and do not need in order to meet that desire. His answer was seemingly simple: pleasure. All we really want is pleasure. Today we tend to associate the word Epicurean with an enjoyment of fine food and wine, the gluttonous satisfaction of physical appetites, and decadent self-indulgence. But these things were a world away from the vision of a pleasant life developed by the original Epicureans. Epicurus was more concerned with mental pleasures than physical ones, and in some respects more concerned with avoiding pain than pursuing pleasure directly. His vision of the ideal human life focused not on satisfying one's physical appetites, but rather on reaching a state free of all mental suffering. He called that state ataraxia, literally untroubledness, but perhaps the best translated as tranquility. And he suggested is what we all are really after, and he claimed to know how best to achieve it. How might we overcome mental sufferings and reach this state of tranquility? Epicurus thought that first we need to identify the causes of our anxieties, and then we need to arguments to show us that those anxieties are groundless. We have no good reason to worry about the things we do. Epicurus identified 4 sources of distress and proposed arguments designed to counter them. This led one of his followers to call Epicurean philosophy the fourfold remedy. Over the centuries, Epicureanism has not always fared well. It has been associated with atheism, immorality, and gluttony of the senses. As a consequence, it has for a long time been demonized as dangerous and corrupting. Nothing could be further from the truth. Epicurus advocated a modest life based on simple pleasures, all for the sake of attaining mental tranquility here and now. The Epicurean message is that you already have everything you need, if only you could see it. Once you grasp that, all other anxieties will just melt away. Now, I don't know how much of that was resonating with you. As a famous person once said many, many, many years ago, the ultimate Epicureans are dogs. Most of them. Every once in a while, you'll get a worrywart, a neurotic mess. Someone, as I know from personal experience, who every once in a while you get one who's completely insane. But a normal, happy, contented dog is a pure Epicurean. They know what they want, and it's not that much. And when they have it, they enjoy the heck out of it. So it'd be interesting to see how much of this, what the selections are like in there for the Pocket Epicurean. And then this next one is historical fiction. I think this comes out in the summer, April. This comes out in April, which is right around the corner. It's not the summer; it's a week away. This is A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice by Rebecca Connolly, and it is a novel about the Carpathia. It's a novel about the ship that heard the distress call of the Titanic and raced through an iceberg field to see if they could render assistance. The Carpathia is the ship being referred to in James Cameron's Titanic movie when the captain is told that the nearest ship is 4 hours away, and Captain Smith says 4 hours. He's just been told that the ship has 90 minutes to live, and he turns to the designer of the ship, not the designer, but the White Star president, Bruce Ismay, and says, "Well, Mr. Ismay, I believe you will get your headlines." And this is a novel about the captain of the Carpathia. Imagine that. Because April of 2022 is the 110th anniversary of the loss of the Titanic. So what have we got here? Shortly after midnight on April 15th, 1912, the captain of the Carpathia, Arthur Rostron, is awakened by a distress signal from the RMS Titanic, which has struck an iceberg on its maiden voyage. Though information is scarce, Rostron leaps into action, determined to answer the call for help. But the Carpathia is more than 4 hours away, and there are more questions to answer. Will his ship hold together if pushed at never-before-tested speeds? What if he also strikes an iceberg? And with the freezing temperatures, will there be any survivors by the time the Carpathia arrives? Kate Connolly is excited to join her sister in America and proud to be traveling on the Grand Titanic. As a third-class passenger, she is among the last to receive instructions and help after the Titanic hits an iceberg. Despite the chaos of abandoning ship, Kate is able to reach the upper decks and manage to board a lifeboat, though after seeing the Titanic sink into the abyss and hearing the cries from hundreds of people in the water, she wonders if any rescue is even possible. And this novel tells the story of the Titanic and the Carpathia in alternating chapters between those two, one on the Titanic and one racing to the Titanic. I wonder, I didn't notice this at first, but I wonder if the Kate Connolly in here is some family echo of Rebecca Connolly. I wonder if she's thinking, did I have an ancestor on the Titanic? Or does she even maybe know that for a fact? Imagine what that would be like to have an ancestor of yours that was on the Titanic. Just incredible. The Donoghue clan and the Leahys and the Hickeys and the Powerses couldn't afford steerage on the Titanic. It's just give you an idea of the money that we're talking about here. But anyway, those of you who are interested in historical fiction, especially Titanic fiction, I know there are quite a few out there who have a soft spot for anything Titanic related. As far as I know, in 2022, there are no great, big, comprehensive new histories. Even though we have an anniversary every year, 110 seems attractive enough you would think somebody would do it, but I don't think that's true. So this comes out next month in hardcover. Then what else have we got here? These new releases to show you. Okay, all right, this is from Starkhouse Crime Classics. I've shown you a few of these. They are great. Their editorial team is great. They have decided to put their money where their mouth was and bring out reprints of books they want to see out in the world. And that's terrific. It seems to me that almost every Starkhouse thing that I talk to you about is something where I can praise it. Now, do I have a pub sheet for this? No, I don't. Well, I scarcely think that I need one. The author here is W.R. Burnett. And the last time he was mentioned on this channel, I showed you that big, gigantic hardcover 1920s crime noir novel, The Big Book of Crime Noir. You remember we were talking about that thing. It was so heavy I could barely hold it up on camera. And unlike other big book anthologies, it didn't have 1,000 short stories. It had 4 novels of crime in the 1920s, and one of them was by W.R. Burnett. It was his breakout, enormously successful debut novel, Little Caesar. And this is not that. This volume has 2 other novels by him. How incredible is that? High Sierra and The Asphalt Jungle. There was with Humphrey Bogart on the cover there. That is just incredible. What can we have here? Do we have anything to say? William Riley Burnett was born November 25th, 1899 in Springfield, Ohio. Moving to Chicago in 1927, he developed an interest in gangsters, which prompted him to write his first noir novel, Little Caesar, in 1929. Soon after that overnight success, he moved to L.A., eventually writing 36 novels and 60 screenplays, as well as songs, plays, and short stories. And these are the novels on which 2 of those movies were based, High Sierra and The Asphalt Jungle. I'm sure that some of you know those movies well. the fact that Starkhouse Books would bring these two novels back into print, that is just a joyous thing. I mean, good for them. I don't think I have a sheet on this at all. And so this is a review copy, as you can see, because it's obnoxiously bannered all around there. And it's going to be $21 in a paperback when it comes out. But I don't know when it's going to come out, because all the paperwork that's in it was not... does this maybe tell me? Is there a date on here that will tell me? Oh, look at all this info. Okay, this comes out in May. Great. Okay, this comes out in May. So if you're a fan of this kind of stuff, you've got at least one friend in the publishing industry, at least one house that keeps publishing these things. Okay, then this next one comes out in July the 5th. This is A Friendship in Twilight, Lockdown Conversations on Death and Life, between Jack Miles, whose name has come up on this channel many times before, the author of God, a biography, and a few other books that I've mentioned many times on this channel, and Mark Taylor. This is a conversation in Twilight. You can see where they were and the conversations that they had that are all in email. This is basically an epistolary book about the two of them corresponding back and forth about the events of late 2019, all of 2020. So, you know, it's the idea is lockdown conversations, but as far as I can tell, the conversations aren't just about lockdown, not even close. They're about the news of the day. These are two people who are compulsively watching the news. So I don't know quite what to expect here. I'm not. I mean, Jack Miles' credit in the Bank of Steve could not be any higher, but that's for his considered work of scholarship, not for his emails. So I don't really know what to expect here, but it looks interesting to me. And I think that surely we will see many other books like that. Then we have a book by Stephen All called Super Tall. Do I have a date on this thing? I have a sheet for it. April. This comes out in a couple of weeks. This is called Super Tall. How the world's tallest buildings are reshaping our cities and our lives. And he probably goes by Stefan, doesn't he? Stefan. We are living in a new urban age, and its most tangible expression is these super tall megastructures that are dramatically bigger, higher, and more ambitious than any in history. From Melbourne to Moscow, a skyscraper boom is reconfiguring city skylines with structures rising beyond anything else we have seen. This book tells the story of today's tallest buildings and examines the global boom in skyscrapers, why it's happening now, how they're made, and what they do to cities and people. I bet I can guess why it's happening now. A huge percentage of the world's population lives in cities and is moving to cities in order to live there. But those are the mega rich. Most of those are the mega rich. And the mega rich, more and more as the 21st century goes on, do not want to live around us. They don't want to have any association with non-mega rich people at all. I know through odd circumstance or weird chance or luck or whatever you want to call it, I know some of those people, including an entire family in Manhattan who almost never leave their building. They are far, far, far above the street. All of their stuff is brought in by food services, delivery services of all kinds, laundry services of all kinds, movie services, everything service, wine, meat, potted plants. All of that is brought in. All of it is arranged, disinfected, cleaned up, unpackaged by help way down, 100 stories down, and then eventually makes its way up to where they live. They are 2 floors down. The family that I'm thinking of is 2 floors down from a full. They have their apartment suite, their condo has a little gym, but they're 2 floors down from a gigantic swimming pool with saunas and a track and bikes and whatnot, and they're 5 stories down from an outdoor space, a vast woodsy outdoor space with plenty of room for walks in what they unironically call the wilderness. They've got fake wilderness trails up there where they can walk all around in the weather with the sun beating on their face. There's plenty of facilities for exercise, for tennis or basketball or soccer or swimming. There's tons of facilities for grilling out. All of it so far above the street that they almost never leave that environment. That environment was very consciously crafted in order to make it so that they don't need to leave. I think the last time that any of them left, all the kid stuff is all on Zoom. The work is all remote. I think the last time that any of them left was to go on vacation, and it was like the boy in the bubble. And they're not alone. I think that accounts. I think a lot of these super tall buildings are residential. But I might be wrong about that. That might be just my impression. I can't wait to learn more about it from this book. Okay, then this next one is Library of America. This doesn't look like a Library of America volume. We've seen it on this channel before. This is the finished copy of The Heart of American Poetry, edited by Edward Hirsch. Do we have a date on this thing? This Library of America, those of you who are big fans of this imprint, it usually doesn't look like this, right? I mean, you've got that right there, but it's usually smaller and black and white, and this is a very different kind of thing that comes out April 19th. We saw the advance copy of this, and I thought it was Edward Hirsch doing a poetry anthology, which would be great all by itself. I have a poetry anthology that he did with Evan Boland called The Art of the Sonnet, or The Making of a Sonnet, that I really, really like. That was enough to tell me that he has a good ear as an editor. But this is a lot more than that. This is not really an anthology. I mean, it is. You've got all sorts of different poems. You've got a lot of him writing about these poems very feelingly, very wonderfully. So The Heart of American Poetry, sure, it is. Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. It is, a poem, but it's also page after page of writing about, and it's wonderful. I expected it to be a good anthology, but I didn't expect it to be so personal. I just think it's fantastic. A very, very strong volume of poetry, if poetry is your subject of interest. Then we have, I believe this is a debut work of autofiction. I'm not going to bother to say fiction anymore because no one writes anything that they call fiction anymore that isn't autofiction. This is a debut work of autofiction that comes out. This is out already. This just came out. I must have missed this. This is The Town of Babylon by Alejandro Varela. The Town of Babylon. Got to give kudos to a cover that doesn't look dumb, right? It might not be your cup of tea, but at least it's not just an ugly blur of color. There's something going on here. There's something to look at. And the author, Alejandro Varela, in parentheses, he, him, even though that is visually obvious. It is visually obvious that is a man. But you're not supposed to believe that you can detect reality on your own. You need to be told what it is. If you don't see the seedbed there of how badly manipulative that is, then you need a refresher course on how cults work. Anyway, he specifies that he is a man, and that you're to refer to him as a man. You don't want to? Suppose you take a look at that picture and you're thinking, well, he says he, him, but I feel like calling him she, her. Tough. Anyway, he is based in New York. His work has appeared in The Point magazine, Boston Review, Harper's Magazine, The Rumpus, Joyland, The Brooklyn Rail, The Offing, Blunderbuss. Wow, that's a lot. The Southampton Review and the New Republic. Good Lord. Oh, that's amazing. He is the 2019 Jerome Fellow in Literature, and his graduate studies were in Public Health. And despite the fact that his author bio started off with he, him, if I had looked at that picture and yet the parentheses had said she, her, I would still have called him he, him throughout this thing. I am not going to let someone else tell me, well, all right, it's visible reality, but it's really dark outside right now. It's night right now outside. But that has nothing to do with the book. I read the author bio first on these things because that's the whole story. This is autofiction. So there's nothing in here that the author had to invent. But let's see, maybe not. So Jerome is a graduate studies were in public health. So what do we know about this book? Andres, a professor of public health, ding, returns to his suburban hometown to tend to his ailing father. Reevaluating his rocky marriage in the wake of his husband's infidelity and with little else to do, he decides to attend his 20-year high school reunion, where he runs into the long-lost characters of his youth. You have nothing else to do. Might as well go. Jeremy, his first love, is now married with 2 children after having been incarcerated and recovering from addiction. Paul, who was Andre's has long suspected of having killed a man in a homophobic attack, is now an evangelical minister and father of 5. Okay, but did he do it? Oh, no, this gets better all the time. And Simone, Andre's best friend, is in a psychiatric institution following a diagnosis of schizophrenia. Okay, well, does he run into her then? I thought it said he runs into these people, but she's in a psychiatric institution. Maybe she's let out for the reunion. That doesn't seem high priority. During this short stay, Andres confronts these relationships, the death of his brother, and many sacrifices his parents made to offer him a better life. Okay. Well, autofiction or not, that sounds really good. If I don't actually want to go on to the author's. I mean, the author stipulates he, him, so I'm assuming that the author spends roughly 10 hours a day on Twitter. And I don't want to go on Twitter or Instagram or whatever in order to learn whether or not this author recently returned home to care for his ailing father. I really don't want to know. I just don't want to know. I'm just going to read it as a novel. I'm just going to read it as a novel. So did I give you the date on this? Yes, this is out already. So this goes on the top of the pile for tonight. And this has blurbs from Kirkus Reviews, Roberto Lovato, Ruman Alam, loved it, and so did Brian Washington. Brian Washington, the author of Memorial and Lot, calls this a masterpiece, a queer masterpiece. Okay, so this is from, and this got a starred review from Publishers Weekly, which is not easy to do. That means a lot. And that the quote from the starred review is a gay Latinx. No one says Latinx, except Twitter activists. No one says Latinx. That's just he's Latino. That's all. A gay Latinx man reckons with his past when he returns home from his 20th high school class reunion in this dazzling debut, an incandescent Bildungsroman. Okay, well, I'm sold. I mean, I would have, even without the, oh God, have you been blocking the bean? That's not good. Even without the blurbs, I would have been sold just by the description. So I'm all set. I will read this tonight. Oftentimes these new releases double as TBRs, and I don't want to miss an incandescent gay masterpiece. Now do I? No, I don't. What if it is one? You know, whether the author is terminally online or not, they can still write a masterpiece. Well, what if it is one? I don't want to miss a masterpiece. All right, then this next one is a finished copy of something that we've already seen. I actually thought this was going to come out as a finished paperback, but no, it's a hardcover. This is Sam Gunn Jr. by Ben Bova. Kind of a retro look there that I admit I kind of like. We've seen this a couple of times, so I don't need to tell you about it. This is hot from the pen of Ben Bova, who died 2 years ago, something like that. No idea how long this is going to go on. Publishers sometimes show a remarkable audacity in just keeping this going. Ben Bova was a towering figure in science fiction, but I wonder if even, I don't know how many fans he has on BookTube, but I wonder if even his fans would disagree with me when I say that his prose style is easy to mimic. It would be possible if there were, a massive market cache for Ben Bova. It would be possible for the publisher with very little trouble to keep producing Ben Bova novels without it appearing to be written by somebody else. Not saying that this probably is written by him. I kind of like the look of it, and I must confess, I never got around to the trade paperback. So now that I have the finished copy, okay, this next one is from Knopf, and I don't have a sheet on it at all. I'd be willing to bet this is already out. This is by Caroline Elkins, who is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So who is she? Professor of History and of African and African American Studies at Harvard University and the founding director of Harvard's Center for African Studies. And her first book, Imperial Reckoning, was awarded the 2006 Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction. She's a contributor to the New York Times Book Review, The Guardian, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, and The New Republic. And she lives in Watertown. Okay, so she's a professor of history and of African and African American studies at Harvard University. That is worrisome. Deep-seated racism has made its way into the corridors of those kinds of into most of academia, and that is worrisome. And I worry about that especially because of this book. I haven't read it yet, though, and it's probably out already. So this should probably go on the list as well for this weekend. This is A Legacy of Violence, A History of the British Empire. Big, heavy, thick thing. I don't have a sheet for it, so we'll just read a little bit of it here. Sprawling across a quarter of the world's landmass and claiming nearly 700 million subjects, Britain's 20th century reach constituted the largest empire in human history. For many Britons, it was a testament to their nation's cultural superiority, but what legacy did the island's nation's empire deliver to the world? I'm guessing that she's going to say that legacy was 100% entirely negative for everyone involved. Covering more than 200 years of history, Carolyn Elkins reveals a racialized doctrine that relied on unrelenting violence to secure and preserve the nation's imperial interests. Outlining how the ideological foundations of this violence were rooted in Victorian-era calls for punishing recalcitrant natives, Elkins makes clear how, over time, the violence became increasingly systematized. As colonial officials moved from one conflict to the next in Ireland, South Africa, Palestine, India, Kenya, and elsewhere, they brought with them legal codes and emergency regulations that enabled this state-sponsored terrorism. Okay, just a couple more lines here. In the end, when Britain could no longer maintain control in this way, it retreated from empire. Is any of this striking any of you? Okay, so when Britain could no longer maintain its state-sponsored terrorism of unrelenting violence against its colonies, it retreated from imperialism. That's the narrative in this book. So no ceding of sovereignty, no gradual transitions, none of that happened. It's all people being driven out at bayonet point from unrelenting violence. As it went, Britain officials destroyed and hid the incriminating evidence of its policies and practices. Okay, I can't take any more of this pub sheet, but I will read the book. Probably this is... you see, there you have the unrelenting violence on the cover there. No scholarship children, no famine relief efforts, no inspiring architecture, no scholarships to schools in some of the greatest institutions in the world, no upward mobility, no financial mobility, no gift of literacy, no nothing like that. There you go. There's the unrelenting violence. That's all you've got. State-sponsored terrorism. But I'm guessing that the book is probably out already, so I should probably get to this. So the things that I'm reading this weekend, this is indeed building my TBR. And who knows, the author and I might get along. You never know. She certainly seems to know her subject, but she couldn't have a position at Harvard if her racial declarations didn't fit the hymn book. She wouldn't have a position at Harvard or any other school in America if she wasn't singing from the same hymn book, verse for verse, as every other academic that I've ever seen. Will there be any, in other words, will there be a legacy of violence? Will there be any mention in here that imperialism, that the British Empire had any positive effects on anybody other than the 1% of the richest people in England itself, in London? Were there any positive effects anywhere else? And it was pretty odd for someone with the last name of Donoghue to be asking that question, but I don't like my history strained through the sieve of ideology. I don't like that. You could say all history is done that way, but plenty of historians try to make a balanced effort, and we'll see. Maybe this historian does. Maybe the dust jacket was meant to be inflammatory. If it sounds of interest to you, let me know. Any of these things. Actually, let me know about any of them. Then we'll do two more here. These are, unfortunately, one of the last remaining publishers. I won't blacken the name, but one of the last remaining publishers or distribution groups that still puts those huge "Do not steal this book, you filthy piece of scum" stickers on the front cover of their advanced copies, their review copies. The sticker is huge. It's by far the biggest thing on the cover, and it was chosen to be unremovable. You can try as hard as you want, but you can't do it. Because they want to make sure that the people who are giving them free publicity don't get anything out of it, except maybe excoriation. Just make sure when you see this sticker that you're a filthy thief, and we all know it. Now, kindly do my work for me and advertise this book. I have tried my best to take these stickers off here. I at least wanted you to be able to see part of the cover. And I'm showing you these because the books sound interesting. And I'm hoping that the finished copy that's in the bookstores won't have a big, gigantic, obnoxious sticker on it aimed maybe at insulting you, the customer. Maybe it's just the reviewer that they want to insult, the reviewer and the editor. The first one is by William Livesley and Darren Worcester, and it's called Let's Go for a Ride. The wildlife of Maine's longest tenured undercover game warden. You see, that was the whole sticker right there, but this isn't that. It's an uncorrected copy. This sticker just said, don't steal this book, you filthy piece of scum. But we can hear about the book anyway. I don't think I have a sheet for it. Oh wait, yes I do. Yes I do. So I'll also be able to tell you when this comes out. I don't know how readily available it will be. Steve Devine is very tired. We went on a long walk. Once it was clear that we weren't going to get rained on, we went for a long walk. And I think we've got another long walk on the cards. Pretty sure. Because I think it's going to rain tomorrow. So I've got a sheet for this. So that's what the cover's going to look like. Can we cut off the ugly sticker residue? That's what the cover's going to look like. Let's Go for a Ride is the story of Bill Livesley's 30-year career in the Maine Warden Service. Heralded as one of the best covert investigators in the country by the Maine Warden Service, Lieutenant Dan Scott, Bill is the agency's longest tenured undercover operative, having spent 20 years in the Special Investigations Unit. Let's Go for a Ride is the universal bad guy code for breaking the law. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Among Maine's most sinister wildlife offenders, its utterance is prone to incite alcohol-fueled night hunting, high-speed car chases on the winding country roads, drug dealing, arson, and attempted murder. The worst of the worst were Bill Livesley's bread and butter. Doesn't this sound good? This is why I wanted to tell you about it, even though it's got an obnoxious sticker. His success at putting the truly bad guys out of business was driven by his upbringing as one of them. Born and raised in Pennsylvania, Bill's father was a successful businessman whose blind ambition sent him down the dark path of drug trafficking. It wasn't long before young Bill was tagging along and doing drugs with his dad. The aftermath of witnessing his father perish in a fiery standoff with police sent Bill spiraling out of control. He lashed out at law enforcement by dealing drugs, and he numbed the pain and confusion by doing them. Deep down, he knew his life was broken. When a high school football teammate invited him to attend a Fellowship of Christian Athlete meeting, he discovered his new faith and a new path in life. I wonder, will this tell us anything about what he encounters? No. No, this tells us about who he is and where he got his start, but it doesn't tell us anything more than what we've seen, the illicit hunting, nighttime drag racing, that sort of thing. Sounds fascinating to me, anyway. And this next one, also sticker residue. This is a finished copy. Okay, I have a sheet for this as well. I bet this is out already. This is from Prometheus Books. Is this out already? Yeah, this came out in March. If it's not out already, it'll be out on Tuesday. This is by Jeff Pierce, and it's called The Gifts of Africa. I will be working to get the sticker residue off both of these things, but yours won't look this way. Nice big thing. This is what it'll look like in your bookstores. This is a finished copy. Let's see here. We learned early on in school how Europe and Asia gave us important literature, science, and art, and how their nations changed the course of history. But what about Africa? There are plenty of books that detail its colonialism, corruption, famine, and war, but few that discuss the debt to African thinkers and innovators. In this book, we meet Zara Yacob, an Ethiopian philosopher who developed the same critical approach and several of the same ideas as Descartes. We consider how Somalis traded with China, and we meet the African warrior queens who still inspire national pride. We explore how Liberia's Edward Wilmot Blyden deeply influenced Marcus Garvey, and we sneak into the galleries and theaters of 1920s Paris, where African art and dance first began to make huge impacts on the world. Relying on meticulous research, the author brings to life a rich intellectual legacy and profiles modern innovators like acclaimed griot Papasuso and renowned economist George Ayete from Ghana. So I don't have the specific date in March, but I think I'm going to learn a lot from this book, and that's always fun. Nice big thing, The Gifts of Africa. So for once, a big historical inquiry on Africa, but isn't just about the slave trade. It's about all kinds of other things. That'll be refreshing on its own. And then the last of these new releases that I want to show you is a kid's book. It is written by Catherine Barr with illustrations by Jenny Desmond, and it's called The Wolves of Yellowstone, a rewilding story. And it is the fascinating story of the wolves who restored the ecosystem of Yellowstone National Park. I don't think I have a sheet for this. I think we're just going to be on our own here. Oh, no, I do. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So this is from Bloomsbury, and it comes out on April 5th, so right at the beginning of April. Don't want to block my little wolf out of here. Let's see here. In the 1930s, the last wolves disappeared from Yellowstone National Park. Without them, elk herds overran the plains. Bears starved, rabbit families shrunk, and birds flew away to new homes. Then plants and trees started to die off too, and even the flow of rivers was affected. Could the park be saved by the wolves it had lost? After years of planning, in 1995, a team of experts was ready to find out. They carefully relocated 14 wolves from the Canadian Rockies to Yellowstone. This is the story of their homecoming. And that is entirely true. I don't want to burden a kid's book with a lot of sermonizing about nature, but I know a lot of kids are watching. And that is entirely true for those of you young people who are watching. Someday we will talk in person. A wolf is what's called an apex predator. And that means, aside from humans, if you take humans out of the equation, nothing preys on them, and they prey on everything else. And you wouldn't believe how much that can affect an ecosystem. You might think, well, okay, if there are wolves in Yellowstone National Park, there are plenty of elk as well, and other deer, and smaller animals. If the wolf is an apex predator, then if you take them out of the equation, the system will be affected only in that you'll have more of those elk and more of those deer because no one will be killing and eating them. That isn't true. As that description gives a clear indication, when you take the apex predator out of the system, the whole system goes out of whack. You need to bring them back in order for that to happen. It's not just that they keep the elk population down. And keep in mind, that's true for all apex predators. That's true for tigers in India. That's true for lions on the African plain. That's true for all apex predators. They do that. So let me give you an idea. This is what the artwork looks like. And you've got narration that goes along. So sometimes the narration goes along a little bit more. So this is more along the lines of a very informative kid's book rather than a performative one, rather than one that you would really read out loud. And it comes out in just a week, just a couple of weeks. The Wolves of Yellowstone, a story of rewilding. So there you go, a bit of a long video, and I think probably beyond my ability to do a Steve period. We have the Wolves of Yellowstone. We have the Gifts of Africa. We have Let's Go for a Ride, which it sounds like it's going to be a personal story about undercover game warden's, not just his fight against the bad guys in the wilderness, but also his fight against the bad forces inside himself. Could be really good. Then Legacy of Violence. This is a reappraisal of the nature of the British Empire. That sort of thing appeals to you, even if you argue with the author. It'll still be fun to read, right? That's how I look at it. Then Sam Gunn Jr. by the legendary and late Ben Bova. Then The Town of Babylon, a debut novel in which a protagonist goes home to his high school reunion. The Heart of American Poetry by Edward Hirsch from Live America. Super Tall, a study of what the freakishly tall modern buildings do to cities and presumably to the environment all around them. Then we have A Friendship in Twilight, lockdown conversations between Mark Taylor and Jack Miles. No idea what to expect of that. We have High Sierra and the Asphalt Jungle by W.R. Burnett. now out in an affordable paperback edition from Starkhouse. We have A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice, a Carpathia novel. Actually, not just Carpathia, though. It's also a novel of the Titanic. And finally, The Pocket Epicurean. A little thing, you're literally supposed to be able to slip it into your pocket, about what the Epicureans were all about. So there you go, some new releases for you to consider. And there'll be more where they came from. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up for now. It's gone on quite long enough. I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.